Okay, welcome back. Part 2 of the Prairie Comic Arts. Just took a I just took a bit of a break, charged the battery a little, got the first chunk edited and getting ready to upload. Got a chance to watch a little bit of the round table, and all I gotta say is, Travis, you guys are killing me. Travis and Ryan were on tonight, and I caught about, I don't know, half an hour of it. And the amount of books they talked about, I hit it right when they were talking about indie books and stuff. And I enjoy watching the show a lot because it's kind of my chance to kind of keep up with new titles. But sometimes it really does kill me, because there was a lot of books they were talking about tonight that really sound interesting that I now want to hunt down and read myself. So thanks a lot for that, you bastards. Okay, so let's talk about who I talked to and what I picked up and yada yada blah blah blah. The first book that I'll talk about by a guy named Nicholas Burns, who kind of put it all together. I'm just double checking the name here. Yeah, Nicholas Burns. He wrote 2 of the stories, so there's a bit of a history about this. So it's called Arctic Comics, and it's a hardcover. I've seen it around in the shops here quite a bit lately, both at the bookstore and at a couple of the comic shops. And he was the first guy that I talked to at the festival for any length of time. It's always one that I've seen, and every time I see it I end up flipping through it, and it looks really great, and I hum and haw about picking it up, and then I don't because I'm in a comic shop and there's so many things to pick up. I'm really glad I didn't, in a way, because I got a chance to kind of buy it straight from him, and he was kind enough to scribble in it for me, which was great. And he's a super nice guy. It was cool to hear from him a little bit of the history and his time in comics. He's been around for kind of 30 years-ish. So the deal with this was, it's all Inuit and Indigenous people for the most part. So there's 4 main stories, and then there's kind of a short strip that kind of appears a couple of times throughout it. 2 of the stories are written by Nicholas. One of them is drawn by George Freeman, Captain Canuck fame and ever popular Winnipeg gentleman, I might add, and colored by George's wife. The other 2 stories are, I believe, both by Inuit writers and possibly artists, both. He was living up in '84. He moved to the Arctic. 1986, the World Expo in Vancouver gave him an opportunity to... They wanted to sell something from the Northern Territories, and he put together a comic as something that they could kind of sell. That was very popular, and he was talked to in about doing something similar for the Canadian Pavilion at the 1992 World Expo in Seville, Spain. It was envisioned as a cross between a European-style comics album and North American comics, with a variety of stories by Inuit writers and artists, creators with a closer, clearer cultural connection to Inuit stories and the Arctic. So he got these people together for reasons that he doesn't go into. They missed the deadline for it. Fast forward to a few years ago, friend and fellow comics creator Lovern Kinzerski urged me to blow the dust off of Arctic Comics 92. He introduced me to people at Renegade Entertainment Arts, and then this book was created. And it really looks fantastic. I'll just kind of flip through and show you some of the art. This first story is the one that appeals to me visually the most out of the whole book. The rest is really great, but this one really appeals to me. And I've started reading it already, and it looks very, very cool. Again, I mean, it's just something that I'm craving more of lately. Different voices, especially voices of Indigenous people here in Canada, hearing other stories, their folk tales put into graphic form, especially with having 2 children now. I'd like to have more exposure to a wider range of artists and writers in the house for them to reference, and I think it's just really important, especially being in Canada, to have a lot of exposure to the Indigenous population here and their stories and their voices. Yeah, really, really important. That said, that's not the sole reason I bought this. I bought it because it also looks like a fantastic book. And there's the George Freeman story there, or drawn story rather. So yeah, very, very cool little anthology book there. Not super thick, but really nicely put together. Really excited about this. Maybe that'll focus in for you. I will do my best to put all sorts of links in the description where you can go look at this kind of stuff and hopefully find information on how to order stuff yourself if it is interesting. I don't know how widely distributed this is. I imagine in Canada it's a little easier to get a hold on. Across the border, not so sure. I imagine not that easy, but really, really highly recommended, that book, I would say. And then I guess while we're on the George Freeman tip, it was his wife who was part of the comics coloring panel. So after the panel, the friend of mine that I was there with, as I think I mentioned in the first video, he did some time at Digital Chameleon, and I believe he knows George Freeman from his previous life in that comic coloring world. So he was standing at the table talking to George, and he was showing him George was showing him some of the drawings he's been doing lately, and they were talking comics. And I had a chance to talk to his wife and just say how much I enjoyed the talk. This page specifically, sorry, let me just backtrack. This page specifically she talked about, which was neat. Again, it was the idea of hearing a colorist break down a page and why they made certain choices, why they chose, she was talking about why she chose texture for the snow as opposed to some of the other things, and a common mistake that she sees with kind of colorists that are just starting out, putting texture on everything, and how that kind of muddles up the page, to her mind anyway. Was just fascinating seeing an actual page and seeing them break it down. So I wanted to sit and talk with her a little bit more because, again, like I said, I wish the panel was longer. She kind of said, do you have any specific questions then? I said, honestly, nothing really specific. It's just I don't know a lot about that world, and I'm just very curious about it. So I liked hearing the stories of what you used to do before digital technology and what you do now, and just whole color theory and things I find fascinating. And she's a really great woman. Both of them are amazing people. They were really nice to talk to. And again, I mean, at the big convention, there's no way in hell I would have had a chance to talk to them for this length of time that we did. So he had one comic left of Captain Canuck, the 2014 Canada Day edition, kind of an anthology, a bunch of different artists and writers in it. There was a story in here that he drew and she colored, written by Richard Comley. Laurie Smith is his wife's name, if I didn't say that already. And then he was kind enough to sign it. Actually, both of them signed it for me on the page. He asked me if I wanted it on the cover, and I said no, I'd rather have it on the page of your story, and personalized it for me, which is always a good conversation when it comes to spelling my name. People never spell it right, so I always make sure that they put it on a piece of paper, make sure it's spelled right, and then put it in the book. Anyway, yeah, again, super nice guy. Am I a big Captain Canuck fan? Not particularly, but it was great to meet him and talk to him. And he just charged me for the book, $3 for the book, and they were just kind enough to offer to sign it, and as if I'm gonna say no. Really, really cool. So that was a great conversation. I kind of hit all the people that I was really interested in when I looked at their art online. Another of the first guys that I talked to, he didn't do comics, but his art really worked for me. I thought his art was fantastic. Now, I believe it's Nico Rudolph. It might be Nico Rudolph, N-Y-C-O, and then Rudolph. There's his card right there. He does a lot of kind of faux propaganda type posters and fake advertisements and military type things, but with animals. He's got this series of stuff that's with bears and stuff, and then he's got these dinosaur drawings, which I really liked. Just the detail, and I think it's really nice work. So I saw him, and when I saw his booth, or when I saw his table, lo and behold, what has this guy done? He's done anaglyph 3D prints, 3 different kinds. This is the one that I picked. So we ended up talking about a few different things. One of them was, does he ever have plans to create a comic? And he said he did. He was actually approached by a publisher at another convention, saw all his bear posters, and said, this seems like a world. When do we see a story? Because he's got basically a world built around these characters that he uses. So now his kind of focus is creating a comic in hopes to get something published. I told him, I didn't say forget the bears. I just said what I would love to see is, I'd love to see you do a 3D comic. And I started talking about, you know, my love of like the Eclipse and Blackthorn Publishing, 3D stuff. And just talking to him about how he figured out how to do it and what that process was like. And he kind of started talking about just that he's not very technically savvy, so a lot of the things he was reading didn't quite make sense. But once he started playing with it and playing with shifting the colors and how to get that depth, it started working for him a little more. And then he found out that with using Photoshop he could create different effects with the 3D. If you think of like the 3D as like, here's the foreground, here's the middle ground, here's the background, you're dealing with these very separate layers as far as like when you see a character, their head is kind of floating in front of their body. With this one, he recommended this one. Out of the 3, he didn't recommend it. This is the one that he said was his favorite, just because he was really happy with how the 3D worked in this one. I don't know if people own the cyan and red glasses at home, but if you do, just pause it and have a look at that. Maybe it'll translate okay. Probably not as well as it does in real life. He was able to kind of mold the 3D a little more, so the head doesn't float kind of disembodied from the rest of the image. It all, especially down in the tail area here, you can really see it kind of taper off. It doesn't seem like it's one layer separated from another, separated from another. It all really feels like one 3D image, and then set against this backdrop of the water, which is even further back. Really amazing. Really nice guy. Really nice guy. And when I left, somebody else, as I was leaving, somebody else was talking to him about 3D, and I made a point of saying, see, telling you, man, 3D comics, go for it. Included in it is a business card, and then he has his own set of 3D glasses that he got made up, and he said was actually the most difficult part of the process, hunting down enough 3D glasses. And he said he finally found a big stash of them. And I made a point of telling him Johnny Zero had recently told me about an eBay auction where for mere pennies you could buy, I think, like 10 pairs of 3D glasses or something like that, from, I think, direct from China. So unfortunately no comics to buy from him, but I couldn't pass up buying a piece of 3D art. That's going to get framed, and it's going to go up on the wall with the glasses hanging on the picture for anybody to come and see. I'll try to make like a nice presentation of that to hang on the wall of the house. So I'm really excited about that. He was nice enough to give me a free magazine too. He had this made for a previous comic convention. Actually, I'll open it up here. I haven't really looked through it. I had a very quick look. He said that he had it for another convention, and recently he thought that he sold out of them. He recently found a whole stack of them. So he said, because you're buying something, why don't you take a copy of this too, which I gladly did. it's a lot of Canadian artists, including, if I'm not mistaken, Robert Pasternak is in here, who I'll talk about later. But let me just see. I think Greg Oakes. I have I don't know if you can see off the side there. I've shown it before. A local artist. He did an advertisement with a character for our local recycling, and I think this is a Greg Oakes piece, that recycling character as a zombie. It's not signed here. Let's see if his name appears in the back here. Oh yeah, Greg Oakes, there you go. Page 11, page 17, and page 26. So he's done a couple. Yeah, there you go. So there's another Greg Oakes right there. So it's cool. It's just a compilation magazine of Winnipeg artists doing various zombie-themed pictures and photos and stuff. So he was kind enough to throw that in for free, which was very nice of him. Also very high on my list was a guy, Matthew Dick, and it was one of those instances where I was so taken by his art, and then seeing that he only had one book on it under his belt, I was a little disappointed, and I was hoping that, wow, this guy is a creator, and I was hoping that he had a whole stash of stuff. All he had for sale was this comic. He didn't have any prints or anything. He was sitting and sketching in his sketchbook at the convention. So I talked to him briefly. It's called Winterpeg, and it's in the near future, environmental and social collapse boils over into a devastating world war over resources. A desperate experiment meant to save humanity leaves the world frozen over. Few remain, and those who do pay a terrible price. In Winnipeg, only one family survives. Written and illustrated by Matthew Dick, Winterpeg is a standalone post-apocalyptic story inspired by spaghetti westerns and pulp comics from the 80s. Follow Ash, her sister Anna, and their grandmother as they survive the cold and the cold-blooded. The story sounds fantastic. It sounds great. You know, I'm sure it's going to be very entertaining. But the art is really what drew me into it. A very kind of European feel, a very Brandon Graham-ish feel. I love the color palette. I think it looks like a fantastic book. I'm really excited about this one. He was a very nice guy, as well as everybody was. Like I said, I wish he had more things to show off and for sale, because I easily would have bought a print of something of his to put up in the house here. But either way, the one book he has is mine. Very excited about that. I can't wait to read that. Winterpeg. Maybe we'll talk. I'll talk about this. There was one woman there, and I'm probably going to butcher her name, and I apologize if she ever does see this video by some strange chance. Schumann is the last name. Healy or Helly Schumann. Hely. Schumann. There's her business card. This is all that I have to show of her stuff right now. I will definitely show you the book when it gets here. She was fantastic to talk to. Tierra Negra is the title of the book that she had. She had a booth right beside Matthew Dick, and the first time that I went there, he wasn't there, but she said he'll be right back, and I started talking to her and looking at her book, and just kind of, so how long have you been doing comics? And she said, since January. Which amazed me, because her work was really cool, especially the front cover. I loved the image on the front cover quite a bit. The interior was great too. The book looks fantastic. It was really nice to talk to her, because she was one of those people there that's like, I'm brand new to this, I'm still finding my way around, this is the first convention I've done, all I did was get 10 copies printed up, I didn't realize I sold them within the first hour. She's like, I'm just surprised. So she had some forms that she said, if would you like to buy a copy? I said, absolutely I would. I gave her my $10. I put down my contact info on a piece of paper, and she said, "Oh, that's great. You live kind of close to me. I'll even drop it off for you. I can come by. I have all this time free after work and blah blah blah." And you know, so she was really just great to talk to. And again, I mean, it's the whole thing that gets me excited about this kind of stuff. You see these people who are starting out and who've clearly got talent and who are just getting a chance to showcase their work. And it doesn't bother me that maybe, you know, she's just brand new. So, I mean, she didn't know, right? An honest mistake. But I'm glad to support. It just makes you feel good supporting your local artists. And again, I mean, it's just one of those things I wish that our comic shops had here's the Canadian section, here's the Winnipeg section. I wish it was easier to find some of these people around town. It's just not. We don't have those kind of niche comic shops. You know, for example, like I listened to Damien talking about the shops in Portland and what I do know about the shops there, or even shops in Toronto and things. They have more of these kind of specialized comic shops where they're dealing with more kind of art type comic books or promoting local talent and things like that. We just don't really have anything set up like that here yet. And it's a shame, because it would be great to be able to go somewhere and kind of help grow that artistic community, because clearly it's out there and clearly there are plenty of people doing it. We just don't really have the place for them yet. Hopefully that changes. But so I'm really excited about that one, and I'll be sure to show you that when it shows up. As I said before, I ran into Robert Pasternak again. I met him a few years ago at the bigger comic convention, the C4 convention. And he's been doing comics since like the 80s. I think 1980 is when he said he first published something. And he actually showed it to me. We were talking about comics and stuff, and I started talking about Fogel, and he was saying how, oh, that's great, Dan Fogel kind of highlighted me in one of the comic price guides, the supplemental guide that came out a number of years ago. And so we started talking about like his history in comics, because I was saying that I'm really interested in what kind of things were going on in Canada and even in Winnipeg around those times. And he started talking about his early work, and then he pulls out, here actually is my first book, this collaboration I did with a friend of mine, and he flipped through it for me, and I got to see some of his really early stuff, which was fantastic to see. But he does comics in all sorts of shapes and sizes. It's all very kind of abstract. And his kind of long-running series is the Acid Man Society. And he deals with a lot of packaging and things like that. So for example, he's got one that looks like a Mr. Big chocolate bar, and then there's comics inside that. He's got a box that looks like an oversized box of chiclets, and inside that is a bunch of comics, like mini comics. If you're old enough to know about the gumball machines that had the tiny tattoo books, or the tattoo and the joke books and stuff, that's the kind of size we're talking about for these comics, which is great. And then it goes to stuff that's, one of the books I bought from him is regular kind of magazine size. But this time I bought some mini stuff from him. So this is Acid Man Society number 36, called New Gods. And as you can see, it's very art-centric and abstract looking, and I love the looks of this thing. So I was glad to support this. So look at some of the inside, and then some other stuff. The Portal of Pasternak. Super nice guy, really nice to talk to. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to pick his brain some more about what was going on locally back then. I've since stumbled onto a guy in Steinbach on this same topic, who's got a site, Comic World, and I believe it's the online version of the store that used to exist when I was a kid, and he's got a ton of underground comics. I got his contact information from Fogel, and I've contacted him, and he sent me some links. He's got a whole website up. I've seen the website in the past, but obviously I never gave it much of a close look. tons of underground stuff, and in the underground section there's a whole bunch of comics anthologies of Winnipeg artists, which I'm hoping to get my hands on as well too. I haven't contacted them yet with a list, but I'm hoping to kind of dig more into that, so I'll have some more of that kind of stuff to show you. The other things I got from Pasternak, they're kind of wrapped up like Bazooka Joe comics, and these were $2 ones. And there's one that I unfolded and I can't fold it back the way that it was, which is fine, but I'll show you what it looks like unfolded. You unfold the whole mess and you get some little comic strips on a piece of paper. Again, very abstract, but very cool. I really like his style. I like it quite a bit. Does it unfold again? No, it doesn't. It's just these two sides. So this is the same idea. This is number 1, and then this is issue number 2. Really cool. Like I said, super great guy. It was a pleasure to be able to sit and chat with him again. Yeah, I'll try to fold that at some point. I think it just goes like that. Somehow it goes together. Oh, boom, look what I just did. I figured it out. I'm so smart. There we go. So that's what that one looks like there. Finally, the guy who I ended up talking to quite a bit, and as I mentioned earlier was also on the panel for the colorists, is a guy named Scott Ford. I'll be sure to put a link to this. Just today he released a web comic. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, called Giant's Well, and it's one gigantic scrolling comic that amazingly he had one copy printed up in an accordion style book that unfolds to, I don't even know how long, 20 feet, 30 feet, I'm not even sure. Oh, you silly camera. This camera drives me crazy. I don't know why it does that. I can't override it. It drives me nuts. Anyway, what I was saying was I couldn't afford to get all 3 basically, so I just picked up the first one just to give myself a taste of it. And I mean, it wasn't a hard sell by any stretch. I like his art quite a bit. He hand does everything on paper, and then scans it in the computer, and then digitally colors everything. And that's what I think really makes it an amazing looking book. There you go. There's another look at those pages there. So he's got this series. He's got a whole world that he's creating. He's doing a lot of like planning and a lot of drawings of like cityscapes and bars and sewers and the woods surrounding this town. He's really fleshing out this world, and what he's doing is he's drawing these pieces and then he's digitally coloring them in daylight and in nighttime and giving everything a couple of different looks. Interiors as well he's doing with like a daytime kind of lit bar, and then like a night, that same bar lit almost like a nightclub. So he's really kind of creating this whole world that he's going to set some stories in that he's currently writing. And he had a bunch of prints. And Special Sexy Lady Friend and I really loved this one. This was the daytime one. He also had a nighttime one. We just bought the daytime one. On retrospect, we should have bought both just to display them side by side, but we really liked this one a lot. He was nice enough to sign it for me as well there, as well as the Romulus and Remus book as well. He signed the inside for me. Great stuff, and hearing him talk about his coloring techniques, and I don't know, there's something about his style that I really like. It's very cartoony, but it really looks kind of like, I don't know, man, I see these as like animation backgrounds, you know what I mean? That's that type of style that he's got for these kind of cityscapes and the stuff in the woods and then the sewer and stuff. I could see this being a world that, yeah, I mean, it just looks like concept drawing for a cartoon, you know what I mean? I really like it a lot, so this was a really great purchase from him. And again, I mean, very easy to talk to, full of energy. He was saying that he works now as kind of a server in a restaurant. He had a more time-consuming job before, but it just wasn't leaving him enough time to do kind of what he still considers his hobby, which is creating art and drawing comics and that sort of thing. So he quit his previous job to work in a restaurant, so he would have more time to work on this sort of thing. Yeah, so I mean, the fact that he's been doing it for 7 years and still doesn't really consider it a job is interesting to me as well. But yeah, I mean, he just seems like that kind of guy that's going to have a lot of success, because he's clearly got a lot of imagination and a lot of talent. So again, it's called Giant's Well. scottaford.wordpress.com, where you can read it for free, as it says here. And like I said, the printed volume, this accordion thing, was incredible. He also had a concept art book that contained a lot of these drawings that wasn't for sale either. It was just a one-off, just so he could display it and show that. But yeah, very, very cool. Very nicely done stuff. And I think that was it. There was a couple of things there that I wanted to buy that I couldn't for money reasons and availability reasons. I wanted to buy one of the books from the woman who organized the show, but it's out of print and she had no more copies left. So I missed out on that boat. And even since I've been away, I didn't look at what her site was. Let's talk amongst ourselves while I look it up. Okay, so I'm back. Hope Nicholson is her name, and she's the comics editor and owner of Winnipeg comics publisher Bedside Press is the name of her publishing company. And again, so she's going to be doing a Trina Robbins book. Her first book was Nelvana of the North, I think. But Bedside Press, I'll make sure that I put the links. And overall, like I said, I think she did a great job. I can't say that enough, that I was even more impressed than I thought I would be. And it really just gets me excited about the possibilities of things like this here in Winnipeg. It seems like we go through these phases. We had the animation festival for a number of years. Unfortunately, what happens with a lot of these things is the people who are organizing it, they have all this success, they do it, they have all these other interests, it leads them out of Winnipeg. We're one of those cities that happens a lot in throughout my life in the arts and stuff, when I've been in bands or just going and attending various things. People who are organizing stuff, they usually end up leaving, because our city is kind of, it's odd like that. There's a lot of small pockets of people doing things, and it's hard to really grow one particular artistic outlet into a bigger a bigger venue, you know what I mean? I don't know if that's making any sense. It just always remains small, and the people who really want to take it further usually feel like they have to leave if they want to have any sort of success at doing these kind of things. So I really hope that this is something that there's enough people involved, and there's enough interest in people staying here and being based out of Winnipeg that they stick with it, and this is something that we can see every year, and it sort of grows. I'm trying not to get too carried away with it, just again based on previous experience, but either way, as many years as it's here, I'll be going, because it was a hell of a lot of fun. And it was great to not drag my friend there, but that he showed up, and kind of, you could see, it was nice to see the kind of resurgence of interest in comics even within him, because he's doing some amazing work on his own too. Some of the drawings I've seen have just been incredible that he's been posting on Instagram. So hopefully this kind of rekindles something in him as well, that this becomes a jumping off point where he pursues it a little more. We'll see. But at the end of the day, it was a hell of a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. So that's it. Thanks very much for watching. The last thing, I don't know if this is going to be posted before then. I'm going to try to do it before I go to bed, but I don't know if I'm going to have a chance to post both of these. I'm hoping to do a chat with Johnny Zero. We're going to be talking about Helix Comics. It'll be a live chat Sunday afternoon. I think we decided around 1:30 Central Standard Time. But chances are this will make it up after that has already been on, so who knows. But if it is before the time, please feel free to join us. I'm going to have the chat open, and we're going to talk some comics, and that'll be it. Then I'm on vacation for about a week, and I won't be around to watch or make any sort of video. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and we'll talk to you.